this is exactly, I think, one of the key aspects of all of this. Yeah, like, because you say in the West we have kind of like this need to hoard resources or to have like large bank accounts because there's looming fear, right? Like we're in constant fear. We're not going to have enough. There's nobody to take care of us, particularly in North America nowadays. Like even if you get sick and if you don't have money, they're just left to die, right? And this is not a I mean, it is a manufactured fear in many ways because manufactured through the way that the society is unfolding, but it's a real fear. I mean, like people really have that anxiety, which is real. I mean, the kind of society where you really, the erosion of our social connectedness, the atomization of people into individuals, the complete breakdown of community ties. I mean, there still are some community ties within certain particular pockets of society. Communities that are very tightly knit tend to be very religious or very ethnocentric or very exclusivist or very elitistic and so on and so forth. But, within the wide society, like there is an increasing sense of like a radical independence, right? This is actually one of the founding ideas within kind of like Western neoliberal society, like radical independence and self-reliance, kind of like the Burning Man ethos, right? Like you have to be 100% independent, self-reliant. You always have to make sure that you can provide for yourself and so on and so forth. The opposite, well, not the opposite, but let's say in like more traditional societies, that idea is ridiculous, right? Like it counters human nature. It counters human evolution, right? Like people understand very deeply the truth of interdependence, that nobody is radically independent. I mean, nowadays it's almost absurd when people in North America talk about like being like radically independent. I mean, radically independent of what? But like people don't know how to grow a lettuce. Radically independent nowadays means that you're making enough money doing some third order symbolic work that you can go to a supermarket that you expect to always be fully stocked when you have no idea what the supply chain, how the supply chain even works to get that lettuce from the other side of the world into a supermarket in California. But like this radical independence has become a caricature because most people, we don't know how to be like minimally independent. I mean, you throw somebody outside of the confines of consumerist society where we can't actually get shit on the supermarket, where we can't get gas at the gas station, where we can't get Wi-Fi at coffee shops, and we don't know how to do anything, absolutely nothing. Like people are completely helpless. Like this idea of independence is such a charade of consumerist culture. But when you actually go and spend time with people in rainforests or mountains and so on and so forth, like you understand what actually independence means, which is not necessarily like that kind of like consumerist pipe dream of radical independence in a financial way, but actually there's like that truth of interdependence where there's small groups, there are communities where people know, right? Like, well, you know what? If you don't have food to eat this week, it's okay. You're not going to starve. You're not going to end up in the street because there's other people in your community that will help you through the hard time. And then, right, implicitly, even though it isn't like a written contract, but implicitly, it's like, well, they also know that whenever they are going through a hard patch because their harvest wasn't as good or their cow died or something happened, then they can rely on their neighbors as well for sustenance and push them through that rough patch. So there's a much deeper sense of interdependence. There's like, well, I don't have to be radically independent. I don't have to grow all this shit for myself. I don't have to hoard all this shit for myself. I don't have to like ruin the whole environment, just to make sure that I have enough wood to last me through 20 winters. I mean, that's ridiculous. I know that it's okay if I don't do that, because my neighbor is going to help me. And if not, then the council is going to make sure that I don't freeze to death. And if not, then, there's kind of like that much more socialized, interdependent understanding of what thriving means. So not only survival, but thriving, right? The thriving requires kind of like that foundational reciprocity amongst people. Otherwise, I mean, this is, just a very big difference in the way the societies are structured, but one that has allowed people in South America, for example, Andean people and lowland people to, not only survive, but thrive throughout many, many centuries, just having that interdependent outlook and that reciprocity as a primary moral imperative.
Yeah, I think what you're speaking about too, it relates to a lot of what Charles Eisenstein speaks about, and this idea of "fuck you" money. Like people want "fuck you" money, and the whole idea of that is that I have all this money, I don't need you. I can pay for anything. I can just hire whoever, and it seems like a really good idea, right? It's on if you don't really think about it, it seems like, oh, it's great. I don't need to depend on anybody, but then it kind of alienates people that potentially do make this kind of money, and they're living in a fortress, and now they're like, I don't need to have relationships with anybody. I don't know who grows my food. It doesn't matter. Like I just call, Whole Foods, and somebody drops it off. I'm completely removed from everybody, and I there's an illusion, right? There's an illusion that I'm radically independent and that I don't need anybody, but actually I'm relying on people growing my food. I'm relying on somebody cleaning my house. I'm relying on somebody building my house. Like, I don't know how to I can't do all of these things. Like, no one human can do all of these things. And we're actually very dependent on other people, but there's this illusion of certainty and control that I'm controlling everything and that I don't need anybody else. And I think that's what you're kind of saying. That's what you're pointing to, that there's this, we're embedded in this kind of understanding of what we need. This is what success looks like. This is what we need to achieve. And the bigger our fortress gets and the more removed we get from who we actually are on a deeper level.
Yeah. And, like as we approach more and more, I guess, the limits of collapse, these things, I think, they might get more real for a lot of people. I mean, there's now kind of like all this drive of silicon people to build fortresses of doomsday apocalypse retreats and so on and so forth, right? Like the idea like, oh well, I have all these resources, so I'm going to make sure that I can weather through the bad weather of collapse because I can hoard canned food and I can pay a private army of security people. But this is kind of like the extreme, or the billionaires that want to escape Earth and colonize Mars, and start kind of like a new society. But again, like these are all illusions. These are exactly illusions. I mean, like, okay, you're gonna hire a private army to guard you off from the hungry hordes after collapse, but how is that gonna work after the fictions of after the fictions that gave you that power start collapsing, where your paper money is not worth anything anymore, where the status that Western capitalistic society conveyed in you as is worth nothing because now we're in a completely different phase of human reorganization. I mean, what army is going to guard you from what? I mean, people are going to turn on you on the first moment they can get a sandwich in their hands, right? So there's kind of like all of these illusions where people think what independence can be based on a very narrow definition of hoarding resources or having enough power or money to be able to command some sort of authority that is very likely to evaporate in 1 second once those structures or those fictions, those storytelling fictions that we're telling ourselves about our communities and our societies start collapsing in the face of like actual real environmental emergencies.